It's very easy to sit here 2,000 years later and say, I could never do what Judas did. Man, how could a person ever get to the point? How could they ever see what they saw? How could he have ever experienced what he experienced and then betray Jesus? How could he do that? And if that's your thought, if that's what you're thinking about, man, I could never do that, you're missing the point completely. Because the greater reality is that each of the disciples saw it within themselves. They went to him in private. Said, are you talking about me? And so when Jesus says, one of you is going to betray me, every one of those disciples wondered if he's talking about me. Because you see, it's not just Judas. It's all of us. And before we're too hard on Judas, before we just isolate Judas as being some type of aberrant personality, some type of aberrant evil personality, I could never do what Judas did. Before you just isolate Judas and say that's him and not us, remember it wasn't too much later that Peter himself betrayed Jesus, didn't he? Hey, aren't you with that guy? Aren't you one of his? I don't know the man. I don't know who he is. 3 times he was asked if he was a follower of Jesus. No, I don't know the guy. Quit bugging me about it. When he was arrested, all the disciples ran in fear when Jesus needed friends the most. Every one of them betrayed him. It's not just Judas. If it wasn't Judas, it would have been you. If it wasn't you, then it would have been me. Because somehow in the working out of God's plan of salvation and the purposes of God, this betrayal, this act of evil, this act of disappointment, this act of turning one's back on Jesus, God uses that. God used that to bring about his redemptive purposes. So if it wasn't Judas, it was going to be you. And if it wasn't you, it was going to be me.